In the year of our Lord 2022, Bandai released a hack-and-slash game by the name of Gundam Battle Alliance, which at that point was their third PC port of a Gundam game made available on Steam. It was developed by Artdink, known for their work on their A-Train business simulation game series, the PSP lineup of Macross titles, and among many others the Gundam Battle series. As someone who mainly plays on PC and mostly subsists off of emulating Gundam Abandonware, the fact that the rather minuscule offering of Gundam game PC ports was gonna be expanding got me pretty hyped. I mean, I kept my finger on the pulse of it, frequently looking around both on their official site and on their social media for any new announcements of playable unit teasers. That being said, after almost 3 years and some post-nut clarity, what is SD Gundam Battle Alliance really like? All in all, I spent around 50 hours playing this game, having bought a copy during one of last year's Steam sales. I've finished every single mission, including the DLCs, and I have unlocked the entirety of the unit roster, also including the DLC units. Just like the Dynasty Warriors Gundam series, the Victory Gundam SNES game, and the Game Boy Advance SD Gundam Force game, the SD Gundam Battle Alliance is a hack-and-slash game first and foremost, though the general loop feels more like Devil May Cry series as opposed to Dynasty Warriors. It has air juggling, a bit of ranged combat, dodges and blocks that reward good timing, and a resource indicated by a blue gauge that you can spend to extend combos, break the enemy's attack chains, and so on. Each unit can also be enhanced via parts and upgrades, which is neat since some stages, especially at higher difficulties, will act like quasi-stat checks or ability checks. Instead of a more laissez-faire camera look, the camera pivots alongside whatever you're locked onto, though without a lock-on you can look around as you please. As a quick side note, whoever made the PC port made the lock-on switching and the auto-switching a little too fastidious, and many times you'll be fighting a boss only to randomly lock onto some jobber or another target, which can be a major pain, especially when you're up against multiple mini-bosses such as the Musha/Knight/Command trio. Another thing I take umbrage with is the timer in the stages. Well, not the presence of it in of itself, it's just that the pause button does not stop it. At the same time, hitting things feels nice, assuming you're not grossly underleveled for the stage in question, and all of the attacks are generally well animated. Another aspect of the game that I can say good things about is the movement, at least when dashing around. Hopping around, walking and such, that's decent all things considered, but the dash movement overall knocks it all out of the park. Despite its seemingly floaty nature, it feels fairly smooth, almost as if you were soaring through space in an R2-type high-mobility Zaku or something. Air strafing feels really nice too. Each level you get a handful of repair kits to replenish your health with, though you can use them to self-revive. You can also get revived and revive your allies, which are controlled by either the computer or someone else you're playing the game with, though the former can sometimes do incredibly stupid decisions, such as drawing fire when low on health, reviving others in front of a charging boss attack, dumb things like that, so most of the time they are either your lifeline or an active hindrance you have to babysit. As for the game's various foes, Battle Alliance does have a decent variety of mono-eye mooks and visor-wearing villains, featuring Leos, Diff Armies, Gas Ds, Waze Rs, Zaku Cannons, Dagger Ls, and more. Some stages do reuse them, but the lineup is big enough to the point where you don't notice it as much the first few times around. The game's stages are decently varied all things considered, though sometimes the level design devolves into a set of convoluted labyrinths where all the rooms look very samey and the navigation becomes unintuitive. As for the boss fights and some of the tougher enemies, you get two types of them. You either get a large enemy type, like an Absolus 3, the Zeong, the Destroy Gundam, which are spongy as fuck but easier to keep hitting, or normal-sized units, with a so-called stun gauge or something like that. I don't remember the name. Anyways, in the case of the latter, the moment you either deplete that gauge, counter their hit, or pop a chain break, you can smack them around and air juggle them for much needed extra damage. The problem is, some of the playable units flat out don't have the sub-weapons or heavy attacks that would be particularly good at chipping away at the stun gauge of the bosses that have those, which in turn means that unless you have a lot of the blue meter built up or half-decent ally units, such fights will end up feeling dull and flat out not fun. Every unit except for the Gundam Aerial and the SD Sangoku Souketsudan trio can be obtained by just playing through the game stages and getting blueprints corresponding to each of the mobile suits. In the case of the Latreia and the Gatherode gem, You can obtain their blueprints by beating specific stages on hard difficulty, which you will unlock once you beat the main story, while the DLC units Narrative Gundam, Moon Gundam, Sea Gundam, Penelope, X Repair 4, the HFX, and Knight Superior Dragon can be obtained by gathering their respective blueprints from their DLC stages. Ariel and the ST Soketsuden trio you'll just have to buy. The game does get somewhat grindy in as far as resource acquisition and unlocking blueprints goes, but with the amount of missions on hand there is enough variety to make it less unbearable. Personally, I didn't mind it as much, but I'm certain other people may not find it particularly enjoyable. At the very least, you can bring friends along, assuming they also have a copy. Sorry, no local split screen here, unfortunately. Not to mention that aside from the main story missions, chaos missions, and DLC, there isn't much to do once you got what you came for. One feature that I should have brought up when talking about the level customization you get is the ability to use any track of your choice alongside the unit's special attack. So anything from your Nightcore covers of NRUWK to your mother's 50 Shades of Grey audiobook will do. That being said though, you are contractually obligated to set the Turn X special attack theme to Monsoon's theme from Revengeance. I don't make the rules. As for what I did, the playable units here are sorted into 3 categories: sharpshooters, infighters, and all-rounders. Now the sharpshooters are technically meant to be your go-to for ranged engagements, being able to spew beams and hot light downrange, though in truth you'll often end up low on ammo, hoping that you can either get enough of the blue gauge to instantly reload all your weapons, or falling back to your melee attacks before your weapons slowly reload. It becomes more of a pain when up against bosses or when fighting enemies with eye fields, such as the Psycho Gundam. The infighters are your monkey see, monkey punch sort of category, at least in theory. At the same time you will have to cling on to those bosses like a tick in order to stay viable, and some of your sub-weapons are only good for fighting jobber units, such as the GUF Customs Gatling Leap, or one-on-one engagements such as the grab attack of Char's Zagak. As for the flinch resistance ability, it is a cool gimmick, but you'll likely end up saving the blue gauge for chain breakers and reverse bursts instead. As for the all-rounders, this is where you'll find units that are generally the very definition of jack-of-all-trades, master of none. At least that's how I would describe it if the typesetting wasn't ridiculously arbitrary, with the category containing the Strike Freedom, Gundam Double X, and the 00 Quanta for some reason. One big downside to this game is that the unit lineup is incredibly lacking. When you initially take a look at the list of the series listed, or even open the site for the game, you'll be greeted with a list that's 35 series strong, including Thunderbolt, Beltorchica's Children, See the Stray, and Iron-Blooded Orphans, with Moon Gundam, Gundam Hathaway, and Gundam 00 Revision live drama, alongside others as DLC lineups. Regrettably though, the roster is more akin to one of an early Gundam Extreme Versus entry or Gundam Versus for PS4, as opposed to the rosters of Gundam's Dynasty Warriors games or titles like SD Gundam Gashpon Wars. At the same time, it makes me happy they gave you the Phoenix Gundam to play with, since it is a pretty fun suit from G-Generation, now featured in a non-G-Generation game. Essentially, what you get in terms of playable units boils down to mostly major character suits, aside from like 8 or 9 grunts, and even then I'm going out of my way to count ace variants. The lineup of the first season of Gundam 00 is entirely absent. Wing only gets the Epion and the Zero, the series Victory Gundam, 0083, G-Reco, F91, S-Stray, Age, and X have a single mobile suit each, and all things considered, you can't shake the feeling that you're missing something here. Despite being a beat-em-up game, melee powerhouses like the Death Scythe Hell, Crossbone Gundam X3, or the Ultron Gundam are nowhere to be seen. As much as the game advertises its combo variety and attack chains, mobile suits like the Strike Gundam or the Impulse, which could get a lot of mileage out of it, aren't there. And don't get me started on the lack of playable mass production units, despite the fact that the models and animations are there, and both the playable Zaku and the Dom literally use them. I guess you could make the case that every unit is supposed to feel quote-unquote unique or something like that, so if G-Self Perfect Pack had pack switching, there's no need to throw Impulse or Strike in. But if that's the case, why would you add both the Providence and the Legend Gundam? What about the Gundam Mark II? Why is that one not there? At that point you can't really help but start looking the gift horse in the mouth. I seriously don't want to rip on them that much over this aspect, since SD Gundam Battle Alliance is overall a decent game, with flaws that aren't particularly irreconcilable, but I swear it's not particularly easy. The lack of a playable Acguy, despite there being multiple DLCs, doesn't help either. So, in conclusion, is SD Gundam Battle Alliance worth the asking price? No! Then again, with how much nickel and diming is afoot in games nowadays, I'd say that paying more than $30 for a game is a sign of you getting swindled out of your hard-earned money. So, how about a better question? Is SD Gundam Battle Alliance worth getting on discount? Probably. My issues with the game notwithstanding, I did find the game fun enough to keep playing it, and I'm sure that with a buddy or two it gets a little more fun. These were my unsolicited thoughts on SD Gundam Battle Alliance. I'm not running a review channel, so I'm guessing that entries of this format won't be a regular occurrence. But I wanted to somewhat gather up all my opinions on this game in one place and condense them into something less disjointed. If this didn't feel like a major waste of time, do consider liking, subscribing, maybe even sharing thoughts of your own in the comment section below. There's also the proprietary Shirtlad server link and ways to subsidize my endeavors, if you're interested in that, over in the description. Have yourself a good one, and until next time, this is Shirtlad, signing out.